going to talk about toddlers. As I've said, most textbooks either group toddlers in with infancy or with early childhood, but I believe that while they share the characteristics of both, they're unique enough to deserve their own lecture. So, toddlers, the craziest, messiest, most infuriating, emotionally unstable, unreasonable, frustrating, tiring people you couldn't imagine your life without. Everyone who has or has ever had a toddler in their life should relate to that quote. I'm not going to spend a whole lecture on physical development because there's not a whole lot to talk about that we didn't talk about in infancy. So sometimes, sometimes they're discussed with infancy, most of the time they are, but they kind of bridge the gap between the two stages. When I talk about toddlers, I mean the age group between about 18 months and 3.5 years, but toddlerhood is more of a state of mind than an age. We're going to talk briefly about physical development unique to toddlers. So, walking and other gross motor skills. Toddler is used to describe babies who can walk. The age at which babies start walking can vary widely. Some start before they are a year, some wait until 1.5 years. Remember the difference between average and normal. Most start walking around 12, 13 months. Some start with furniture surfing, which means they just pull themselves up and move around the room while holding onto furniture, and some just get up and go. You'll also see the advancement of other motor skills such as jumping, throwing, dancing, etc. Toddlers are getting control of their bodies and they love to show it. Just try to get a toddler to sit still. It's impossible. Fine motor skills. Remember that these are slower to develop, so toddlers don't have much. When they draw, they usually have to use their whole hand, so get them big crayons, something that's easy for them to hold. They love to scribble and try to make shapes they know, but they're not very good at controlling those crayons yet. Some children will develop better grips earlier and be better at controlling, and some will take longer. In general, girls get these skills a little bit earlier than boys, which we'll talk about in a second. So, girls tend to develop motor skills earlier, they walk earlier, they draw earlier, and younger siblings also tend to walk sooner than their older siblings, regardless of gender. Girls also tend to body train sooner. It has to do with control of very small muscles, which girls seem to get control of earlier. So just in general, though there are always exceptions, girls reach these milestones at a little bit younger age than boys do. So potty training. This is a developmental skill. You cannot force them to do it until their bodies and their brains are ready. Forcing them to try to potty train before they're ready can be a frustrating experience for both toddler and parents. It can hurt the relationship, and it can cause issues with toddlers' social emotional development, which we'll discuss later. So, what are the signs that they're ready to potty train? Well, their diaper stays dry for a while. It shows that their muscles are ready to hold it in for a time. This does not mean that the diaper stays dry all day. If that's the case, the toddler is probably dehydrated, which is a health issue. But if it stays dry for a few hours, that means their muscles are ready to hold it in. Another sign is they'll ask you to use the potty. They'll be interested in it, especially if they have older siblings they see using it, and they'll ask to try. They'll tell you that they need a new diaper. It shows awareness of they know that they peed or pooped, and they'll ask you for the new diaper. That means they're starting to say they're uncomfortable with it. They'll also start to tell you, I peed or I pooped. So again, it shows awareness of their bodies, that they know just what just happened. Another hilarious sign is that they will hide to poop. They'll hide behind the couch or the curtains. They'll go into another room and shut the door. It shows awareness that they know what's about to happen, and they hide themselves to do it. Again, boys are generally older than girls when they're ready, and younger siblings tend to do it much sooner than older ones. So girls are probably ready around 2, boys are usually closer to 3, but again, there's individual differences. So how do you potty train? This is hard to answer. Every child is different. The most important thing to remember is don't do it before they're ready. If they're ready, it can go very quickly. My oldest potty trained in 3 days, but he was 3 years old when it finally happened. So he was ready, mentally and physically. For him, we used a sticker chart. He got a sticker every time he peed in the potty and got a prize whenever he filled up a row of stickers. He was old enough for this method to work, however. It won't work on younger children. They don't understand cause and effect enough to be able to use a sticker chart. My second took longer to potty train, but he's also younger when we started with him. He was pretty quick learning to pee in the potty, but he didn't want to poop, which increased his hiding behavior. So he would go lock himself in his bedroom when he needed to poop, so that we didn't try to put him on the potty. So every child is different, and you will find 100 different methods on how to potty train, but you have to find what works for each child. Some children may be motivated and independent and essentially do it all on their own. They'll just come out one day and say, "Mom, I use the potty." Others need to have the issue forced. You need to just say, "Okay, no more diapers, that's it." So read books about using the potty to them. Talk to them about it. Let them see you using the potty. Try to make it natural and fun, and make it a game if you can. Remember to be patient. Don't turn it into a fight. It just becomes frustrating for both of you. Praise them when they get it right, but don't make them feel ashamed about getting it wrong. There's going to be accidents. Just say, "Uh-oh," and we'll try again later, and then really praise them when they do it right. If you try for a few days without progress, give it a break for a couple weeks. They may just not be ready yet. It can be a long process, or it can be a short one if they're really ready for it. Now to move on to cognitive development and toddler thinking. So now we are in Piaget's second stage, pre-operational thought. So Piaget said they were in this from about 18 months to about age 7. So we'll talk more about this stage in early childhood. Essentially what it means is they don't have logic yet. They can only think about one characteristic of things at a time. This is called centration. So they can only focus on one aspect of an issue. They don't understand metaphors or abstract thoughts or sayings. They are very, very literal. Learning takes place through exploration and experimentation that allow children to construct schemas that explain the world. They learn through playing. So let's talk about some of the characteristics of pre-operational thought. Egocentrism is a huge one. Children think in terms of how everything relates to them. They are the center of the universe. What they know, everyone knows. What they think, everyone thinks. Whatever they're looking at, they assume that everyone can see. What they like, everyone must like. When comforting someone, they'll bring what they take comfort from. "Mommy's sad, I'm going to give her my teddy bear." If you ask them what they should get for a sibling or a friend for their birthday, they will suggest something that they like. It's all about them. Next is magical thinking. This doesn't just mean they believe in magic, but that's part of it. Children can make incorrect generalizations. For example, a dog barks and a car drives away. The bark must have caused the car to drive away. So they make cause and effect that aren't necessarily related. My 3-year-old was talking about his birthday and said it was over. Then he said, "My birthday is over because the balloons went flat." So they draw connections between unrelated things. They believe that monsters under the bed are real. The things that they imagine are real. Whatever in their brain can be real. They think that things can defy the laws of physics. You can take advantage of this thinking. If they're afraid of monsters under the bed, you can say, "I'm giving you this magic flashlight that will scare the monsters away." Or, "This lamp will keep the bad dreams away." And they will believe you. Next is animism. This is applying life characteristics to inanimate objects. So dolls and stuffed animals have personalities and thoughts. They might say things like, "Dolly will be sad if I leave her at home." And they may also blame things that they did on their toys. "I didn't do it, Teddy did it." And this applies to animals too. They just apply human thoughts and feelings to inanimate objects and animals. So some implications of all these things. As a result of Piaget's theories, preschools and daycares instituted periods of uninterrupted play as an essential part of the day. So discovery learning is a big thing now, and it all came from Piaget. Okay, we talked about language development in infancy, but let's see how it expands in toddlers. We're going to talk about the rapid expansion of vocabulary and the development of grammar and language pragmatics. First, a brief overview of the development of language. So before birth, even in the womb, babies can hear. They hear intonation patterns from their mother's voice, and they are born able to recognize voices of people who were around them during the pregnancy, such as mom, dad, their siblings. From birth to 9 months, they cry, babble, laugh, and they begin to imitate word sounds. From 9 months to 2 years old, they put the sounds of morphemes together to form words with increasing accuracy and complexity. So a 1-year-old has a vocabulary of a few words. They'll babble. They can follow simple instructions, they know names of family members, and they can point and make noises to indicate they're interested in something. By a year and a half, they have a larger vocabulary, they like to repeat sounds, and they begin to combine words into those telegraphic sentences. At 2 to 3 years old, a 2-year-old has an average of 200 words, but they use 1 or 2 at a time. They start to use words like I, me, and mine, and they can mostly be understood even by strangers. They use that telegraphic speech, those 2 or 3 word sentences, and they start to understand and use possessives, negatives, and questions. They know that they need to take turns talking, and they can use different tones for specific purposes, such as asking a question versus saying something. But they will change topics rapidly. And if not answered right away, they will repeat their questions over and over again until they get an answer. And they'll start to talk to themselves to help control their behavior and solve problems. At 3 to 4 years old, their sentences contain nouns and verbs. They can use past tense and plurals. Now they have a vocabulary of close to 1,000 words. They can relate stories. They use longer sentences with more complex grammar. They add pronouns and past tense. They give related responses to questions when they want to, and they know to wait for answers when they ask a question rather than keep asking it. They also learn to adjust their speech to the audience, so they'll talk differently to a sibling than they would to an adult. So here's a chart about language milestones and just some of the basic things they could learn. Remember, there is a lot of variation with each child. These are just basic guidelines. So take a minute to look at that. In the next video, we will talk about language acquisition.